Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to NBC Sheila Mack Show. I am your host, Sheila Mack, and I want to give a special thank you shout out to Podcorn for sponsoring this episode. And my personal experience with Podcorn was a while back. A friend of mine actually told me about this incredible program where it helps you find sponsors that are aligned for your show. So for me, that was very important because the values of this show make all the difference, and I want to make sure that everything is aligned with what I am doing. And so that made a huge difference in being able to find the proper sponsors for my show. Now, let me tell you just a bit more about Podcorn. Podcorn is a marketplace connecting podcasters to amazing podcast sponsorship opportunities such as host read ads, interview segments, topical discussions, and more. With Podcorn, there's no middleman, so podcasters of all sizes, different shows can browse and choose opportunities right on the platform. Then you set your own rates and collaborate with brands directly without any exclusivity. You never give up your rights to your podcast or show, and Podcorn is there to support you at every step and ensure you're protected and compensated for the work that you do for the brands. The marketplace mission is to give podcasters transparency, creative freedom, and full control of how we as podcasters and show hosts monetize. So if you would like to connect with them, check out their website. And their website is Podcorn, Podcorn.com. Podcorn. All right. Now let's get this show started. Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we have special guest Sunil Godse. He is somebody that's going to help us learn a lot. Let me tell you a little bit about Sunil. After making a series of bad decisions, with one leading to a friend being shot and killed, Sunil Godse spent thousands of hours on research and interviews to find out that the reason we waste time making bad decisions is because we ignore our intuition. A subconscious phenomenon that we are all born with that helps us make the right decision at the right time in any situation we find ourselves in. Sunil developed a 7-step process that shows you how to sharpen your intuition so that the only decisions you make are the right ones in any situation that move your life forward. All right. Welcome to the show, Sunil.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to educate people on what I found about intuition and how vitally important it is in when making any decision in your life.
Yes, and I'd love to start out with one of the questions I have is related to my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And that is, if you could share a time in your business or personal life where you went through a tough situation and how you got back on track.
Absolutely. So I'll start with the business one. And this is where I was in a series of businesses after moving on from engineering, which I followed sort of the societal norms, Kool-Aid, drank that Kool-Aid, ended up running a number of entrepreneurial ventures. One of them was a retail clothing outlet store that I had with a partner. And we started it quite well. We did things completely unconventionally. We had a DJ on Thursdays. We had dancing people in the windows. And we were using private label, which was one of the first ones way back when. And so things were going really great. And so what ended up happening is we were looking at a second location. And all of a sudden, my partner decided to, it's one of the things that I espouse as values when it comes to the customer is we have good brands, good quality. We don't suffer on the margins. And that was really important for us because it was the customer experience that was really important. And in this situation, he wanted to use lower quality cotton. He wanted to dip into the margins. He wanted to, and then that also helped on the private label. He wanted to go into lower quality, which gave us more profitability. But I was not willing to sacrifice that because I was saying that if you're going to go that route, then it goes against my values as an entrepreneur. And what ended up happening is I stepped away from the business. And I walked away, and it was really hurtful because I really enjoyed that opportunity. I thought we had really a great partnership until his values started straying, and it was really tough for me to pull away. And so it's not only just pulling away, but what do I do next? And that was sort of that void that really can say, oh my God, okay. So I was fully invested in it. So it really left me with an emotional void, as well as a kind of a physical void at the same time. That was tough for me because you have to kind of climb back up from that. And on a personal situation, and again, this was on trusting intuition. So I'm glad that I trusted intuition because if I had gone and continued, I would have sacrificed the values that I had as a business owner. And ultimately that would be felt by the customer. And that's not the way I want to do business. He consequently did. It failed miserably, and he had to shut down the whole operation because of whatever values that he carried on with. From a personal situation, this was a time when I was actually going through engineering, and I had a friend reach out to try and get some advice. She was being stalked at the time. And what had happened is my intuition was saying, there's some urgency here. You need to meet with her that afternoon. And for some weird reason, I had nothing going on that afternoon. I just said, you know what, let's meet a couple of days later. And the very next day, that stalker had actually followed her to a bus shelter and shot and killed her. And I could have prevented that if I gave her the right information or the right advice. Devastating. And that was because I ignored this thing called intuition.
Yes, that does happen a lot. And it's something that I know for myself, I'm very intuitive also, and I've learned to listen because I've had situations like that many times where 99.9% of the time when I listen to that intuitive guidance, it's right. And when I don't listen, that's when I have a problem or something doesn't go right.
Right.
And so even when I question, I still tend to find that I might question it on a mental, like, that doesn't make any sense. Why not? Why am I going to do that? Why am I going to not go there? I've already packed and I'm ready to fly out or whatever. Yep. But if it's really strong and I listen to it, then I see why it made a lot of sense beyond my mental capacity.
Right.
Yes.
And in fact, research actually shows, and when I was looking at the research and intuition, because I really kind of need to blend in the art and science. So the art is kind of how we experience it. And we all have individual signals that are both positive and negative that tell us, obviously a positive signal is the right thing to do in terms of decision. Negative is obviously avoid that decision. But when I looked at the science behind it, there were a lot of MRIs that were showing exactly where in the brain it lit up. One study calls it the X system which is sort of different than the rational system. And in fact, there was research at that time that showed that intuition actually acted 7 to 10 seconds before you actually made a decision or took action. And I'm told from a colleague that improved research is now showing, and it's to be released, that's actually up to 23 seconds before you actually make a decision or take action. So intuition acts really well before you have a thought, which then leads to your behaviors, which then leads to your actions.
Wow. Yes, that's so interesting. And it's very true. So, how do you suggest people enhance this intuition or use it to have better, I don't know, better luck or better results in their business and personal life?
So the first thing I get people to do, and this is something that I have when people go through my 7-day challenge, they can, once they get the ebook, they can go through this, and in 7 days, this is where the 7-step process starts. And in 7 days, they're able to solve any problem that they want. And they have to remember, this is their intuition, it's their signals, it's their subconscious phenomenon. So this is a process that's helping something that they have as a tool that's going to get them to solve a problem that they want to solve. So the first step in that is going to be looking back at what's happened in the past. And if you look at what's happened in the past, you look at good decisions and bad decisions. And what you want to do is take a look at, what did you feel in the moment that you made the good decision versus the bad decision? And so that gives you a basket of positive and negative signals. So common positive signals for me is, the dots connecting, or feeling a flow, or a pull. Others that some of the more obtuse ones are, seeing an orb, and one with like feet coming out, or sensing an omen, although they can't see it or smell it. It just comes up, and it's a positive signal, and specifically in business. The negative ones for me are, that gut tightening, sometimes a negative voice. And one of the entrepreneurs that I had interviewed he didn't have any clue about his signals until he started talking about the bad ventures he got into. And as soon as he started talking about his failures, he started rubbing his left earlobe. And he just said, Sunil, I just got the signal. And now he remembers going into those ventures, and also talking to his wife when he was going into those ventures, that left earlobe getting hot. So there's some common signals versus some ones that are very unique. And you also have to be careful that we also have a common language around intuition, like that gut feeling or that voice. What you have to be careful is that don't just stop at the voice, because if the voice is your first signal in a bad decision, for example, then you're okay. You got that first signal. But what happens is, in a bad decision, those signals start to, because they're subtle in nature, they start to increase in intensity, or they change. And some people akin the last signal before they trusted intuition to being on the streets, being homeless, hit by a car, wanting to take their own life. And so that's how bad it gets before they actually start to trust intuition. So when it comes back to that voice, if it's signal number 1, great. But if it's signal number 3, for example, then you've just not identified 2 other signals. And so what happened to those 2 signals? If you missed them, that means you made 2 bad decisions. And 2 bad decisions could be just as simple as tripping on the stair, or while you're walking, or it could be that you're headed down for bankruptcy. You don't know how severe it is. So this is where you need to pay attention to focusing on what happened in the past. How did it feel? And keep grinding away at those for over time, so you get your basket of positive signals and your basket of negative signals. And so when you have that inventory, the next decision you make, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, or in business, or as an executive, you know what that signal is when you're thinking about doing something. And sometimes it goes against the data. Sometimes it's such an obtuse decision, but it's the right one, because your intuition is telling you that it's the right one.
Yes. And I think that's the hard one, because that's where we question it. It makes no sense. And if we tell somebody, they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. And it's like, but I have a knowing. And you got to go with that. And there's this trust. And I think that it's, as you practice on the little things, you can trust in the big things a lot easier.
Yeah. And it's also understanding how your intuition behaves. Because when I started interviewing a number of people to find out sort of how they thought about intuition, there were really kind of 4 groups of people that I came to. The first ones are the ones that get it. They know their signals, they operate on intuition, and so they're good to go. They don't need any further explanation. The second group are ones that need proof. And so in my book, Gut, that I've got, you can get a free copy of that on the website. There's MRIs and there are research studies that just pummel you with, okay, it's just not my opinion here. Here's a bunch of research that actually shows that intuition exists. And here's some of the outcomes that the research has shown. The third group of people are people that talk about following intuition, but they don't actually live it. And so there's a lot of people talking about being authentic and I trust my gut and a lot of this, but they actually don't understand. It's great as a concept, right. And in most cases they trust it, but in some cases they don't. And a really good example of this is a colleague of mine, Hal Eisenberg, who we met because we were kind of in that same, intuition, mindset, positivity space. And he talked about it, but it wasn't until he actually saw me speak where I crystallized it when it came to the 4 types of intuition and signals. And so now he kind of really had a good understanding of what it was. And then the pinnacle moment for him was he actually got COVID-19. And he was in a New York hospital and he almost died. In fact, he wanted to die. Wow. That's how bad it got. And his intuition plucked him out of it. And he finally understood what intuition was. He understood the way that it helped him make decisions. It was like an open field, whereas before it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And the fourth group of people are the ones that just don't believe. And This is where you have to understand how your intuition works. And so one of my interviewees, one of my first ones, is the guy by the name of John Rothschild. This is a guy who's an investment banker. Data ruled everything. It was all about experience. So at the time when I was doing research for the book, everything came from sort of meditation, cosmic, spirituality. And that's fine if that's where you think intuition is. It's not my role to shove a definition down your throat. It's your intuition after all. Mm-hmm. But for him, that's what he was exposed to. So he didn't think it existed at all. And in fact, when I did the hour-long interview, we start the camera and you can see him saying, yeah, I wish I could shake the hand of the person who sees omens. And these decisions, they just don't figure into my business at all. There's no intuition there. Until I start educating him that, well, you know what, data and experience is a big part of intuition. And in some cases, you make a decision against the data. And he was quick to share a story when he did that he opened up a franchise where it was a 5.5 out of 10, where he normally would open it as a 9 out of 10 on a benchmarking system. Mm-hmm. And that became the best restaurant or best chain of franchise operations under his portfolio called the Beer Market. And at the very end of that interview, now he's fully vested. He's talking about intuition. His body language is there. He's excited. And the last question I ask him is, did you ever make a decision so obtuse because of intuition that people thought you were nuts? And he said, yeah, I've got a very good one about that. And this was a guy making $3 to $4 million a year, private jets, limousines, high-end restaurants. And he wanted to trade it all off and quit that to run a tiny bankrupt little restaurant because of intuition. And everybody's thinking, like, you're nuts. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that there was speed dial with some psychiatrists going on thinking, I've got a client for you. But he said, no, my intuition is telling me to do this. He quit his 7-figure a year job, walked into that tiny bankrupt little restaurant. That restaurant happened to be Eastside Mario's location number 1, which he grew to over 1,000 locations under different brand names, $2 billion in revenues over 20 years before he retired, all because of intuition. And so in 1 hour, I took him from zero to hero. And so the Intuitionology Project was really kind of born saying, if I can do that for him, can you imagine what I can do for others?
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's incredible. That is.
And so, that's just the power of intuition, right? And so for him, it's really understanding how it worked, understanding that there were signals that were unique to him, and looking at the past. That's how he made decisions, and then correlating that and associating that with intuition, because he really didn't. He talks about feelings in the video. So he himself starts talking about the same language that I talk about. There was just zero correlation between that and intuition. He just didn't understand what it was. Mm-hmm. And I just enlightened him to say, well, that is your intuition. That's exactly how it is. And those decisions you made, that's exactly what it did for you. And your success was exactly because of intuition.
And I agree. I think we all have intuition, and a lot of us have been taught to turn it off.
Yes.
And go with what you're told to think or do, or what the common right is, and what pencils. And obviously that little restaurant did not pencil at that moment. That turned into billions. Right. Absolutely. And so it's one of those things that you wonder, okay, I'm a really intuitive person, but I've made bad intuitive choices or choices in my life with relationships and this and that.
Yeah.
What is that?
So there's a couple of things here. When people generally say that they're intuitive in nature, on balance, they're making more decisions based on intuition than not, which just means that let's say it's for you, it's 90-10, just throwing out some numbers. So 90% of the time, you make decisions based on intuition. It's just the other 10 that I'm trying to fix to say that you don't get into those issues. When it comes to things like relationships or even in business, there's things called intuitive hurdles that impact how you make decisions. And there are 4 of them. The first one is fear. It's the fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear of failure. And that fear stops you from moving ahead. So even though you're fearful of making a decision, whether it's in business or in your personal life, there's a positive intuitive signal that's saying that this is right, that you need to take that step. And a great story that I have is a friend of mine who has cerebral palsy, and he was in a wheelchair. And his absolute dream, I mean, he was in a wheelchair for all his life, was to dip his toe in the ocean. And he finally got that chance. His wife and a couple of handlers wheeled him up to dipped his toe in the ocean, fell flat on his face, extremely embarrassed. And as he's telling me the story, he says, Sunil, I have two things I can do at this moment. One is I can basically succumb to the fear, sit back in my wheelchair, and forever regret that I was never able to walk in the ocean. Or the second decision I can make is I can actually trust my intuition and take that step forward and take that step forward and take that step forward. And as he's recounting the story, he points to his chin and says, I got to about here when the water got up to my chin here. And then I looked back and boy, I came really far. And so that is how you kind of overcome that fear. When it comes to relationships, there's a couple of things going on. One is you're overly emotional. And when you're overly emotional, you kind of use self-talk to talk you out of it. But you need to balance emotions with logic. So, intuition's always given people second chances. This is now the third chance where the values are different. You're seeing some abuse. You're just not, it's just not the right thing. And what unfortunately happens is people don't move away. Maybe it is because of fear, or there's too much emotion, or you always talk yourself into, no, I'm going to give that person another chance or another chance. Intuition's already done that. And so this is where you have to think logically that, okay, I have to move on. I have a support system. Perhaps others are starting to tell you the same thing that you trust. That's where the balance is with emotions and logic. Now, just like you can be too emotional, you can also be too rational. And when you're too rational, that's when you're sort of following societal rules, right? So, and I fell into that trap as an engineer. South Asian person, doctor, lawyer, engineer, failure. Being rational meant that I needed to take one of those doors and not the failure one. And I picked door number 3. And that was a disaster for 3 years. And in the 3rd year, I quit to become an entrepreneur. I lost my relationship with my dad. But guess what? 5 or 6 ventures later, $20 million in revenues. It was exactly what I needed to do. And that's what I was meant to do. And the last hurdle is ego. And ego, there's 2 sides to ego. One is the narcissism. The other one is following the herd. So this is where you're associating with people or a person because they're connected to someone famous, because they're wearing a certain brand. It looks good for you. Although your intuition knows you shouldn't be hanging around this person, or that values are certainly are different than yours. And it could be that you became a friend at the start, but something with that person's changed over time. And your intuition is always on, so even if you trust someone, or you have some great friends now, something changes and you grow apart. And you need to move away at that point because you're on your own journey to success. All these other factors are just going to slow you down. And why do you want to slow down? And the other thing is, a lot of people don't realize the cost of a bad decision is actually 2 times the cost.
Yes.
It's the cost of the bad decision, but it's also the cost of not doing the right decision. So it's actually 2 times the cost. So when you ignore your intuition, you're accelerating down a slippery slope at twice the speed that you really want to, and you got to somehow make that up.
Wow. Those are really good points. And I really like how you mentioned earlier about following your own journey.
Yes.
You left engineering and went into your own field. And sometimes we have to leave friends that aren't aligned. And you had a business partner you shared about way in the beginning of our talk, where the core values were not aligned. At a certain point, you realize this. And I think it's the moment you realize and you have this awareness that maybe you didn't have, or maybe they changed, people change, and that it's not aligned to be in that business. It could be that that business or that person can make lots of money, but if it's not aligned with your values, it's never going to bring you happiness.
Absolutely. And the other, from when it comes from a business context, sometimes what happens when we start talking about these things like intuition and trust and relationships, they're intangibles. And many times in business, we want a P&L, we want an Excel report, we want black versus red. And so we rely too much on these tangibles when we don't realize that sometimes it's the intangibles that we need when it comes to core values. And I remember I came in as a consultant with one business. They were failing miserably, and I came in to fix it as a last-ditch effort. They were probably about $500,000 in revenues in the healthcare space and tanking. People were looking left, right, and center to leave, and partners were leaving. And so I came in to see, okay, well, we've got someone he's our last-ditch effort. The only thing I injected was trust. That's what I started with. Immediately, I knew we were draining cash. But the way they treated the employees was not trustworthy. One of the co-CEOs kept lying. He was known to do that. I told both of them, you stay away. If you want this fixed, you let me run the helm. The first thing I did was raise all the salaries right across the board for the employees. Key employees that were thinking of leaving finally says, who's this new person? At least they gave me a chance. And that $500,000 through them overproducing, giving me operations manuals, training other people, fully engaged in what we're doing. They got that sense of camaraderie. And if it wasn't without them having that sense, we actually ended up expanding at a time when the business, when I came in, it was collapsing heavily. And they went from $500,000 to about $3.5 million before I stepped away from the business. Because they wouldn't give me equity. And it was expensive for them because I was making percentage on the top line. And so it was incredibly expensive for them. And I said, well, let's just turn that into an equity at a valuation that we can both agree on. But the one CEO that kept lying was the one that was really threatened by me. And he's the one that said no. And I said, you both have to be on board or I can't, because it has to be an all or none. He said no. So I left. 6 months later, they were done. They collapsed because I was gone. The trust was gone. He went back to lying and mistreating the employees. And they got to a point where their skills can be taken at a company that is going to really laud them and applaud them because they were excellent employees. And so there's an intangible trust, trust, and the tangible 6 times growth, 7 times growth, right? And so this is where we have to really think about the intangibles really driving the tangibles. And if you don't start with that, as a company, you're dead in the water. And the other thing is intuition is a two-way street. So as much as intuition is looking out, if I'm a customer or an employee, I'm going to look to you. My intuition is going to look to you. So you can have a great product or service, but if it does not fill a void for me, a value that I have, that I'm willing to pay you for, then I'm not going to give you that money and I'm not going to tell you that. Or if I have, maybe I'm suckered into your marketing, which is promising me one thing. But if I see you behave in a different way, and there's something that's a little bit off, my intuition is going to pick up on that. And when I pick up on that, then I'm also a lost customer. So intuition is just you down the whole line, how you treat people, your marketing message, what are your core values, all are based on your intuition and how you treat others and how it comes, because that's that feeling. And I've worked at companies where I just said that you want to be here versus you don't want to be here. That's the intuitive feeling you get. And time again, this is becoming more and more important, especially as businesses struggle. And during these times, I'm looking for value as a customer. And so I'm going to buy from you when I see that value. And if you're going to try and give me something that's a little bit off or you're a little bit inauthentic, now I'm going to go buy somewhere else. And now we come back to that opportunity cost, which is twice again. So not only do you have the cost of wooing me back to your products or services, you also have the cost of taking me out of the other company that I'm trusting. And so that's 2 times the cost or more because you haven't done things the right way in the first place.
That's so true. And do you have, is this intuition that you have? I mean, you were aware of it when you lost your friend, that lady that you didn't warn her.
Yeah.
because I mean, it might have sounded like a silly thing. What are you going to tell somebody something like that? Don't go do this. It's their life, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that. But is that something you always had, or is that, as a young child, you were very intuitive?
Yes, we're all into, so we're all born with intuition, and there's actually studies. There's a study in Gut that I have, my ebook Gut, that shows that children as young as infants as young as 2 months old have shown to have intuitive capabilities. So, and we're born with it. And so as we age, you have all these experiences that you have, and so your neurons are putting these in the subconscious area of your brain on a constant basis. And if you look at your brain like an iceberg, 90%, which is subconscious, is underwater. The 10% which conscious, which is the top, So as you accumulate these experiences, intuition plucks them for the decisions that you need. When you're younger, you're not subject to societal norms, the opinions of others. And so I remember the first time that intuition hit me was when I was 5 years old, and there was video games that my dad wanted me to buy, and he said no, it's too expensive. But there was a distinct voice that was telling me, Sunil, you need to go door to door to raise money. So here's this 5-year-old going door to door, raising money, lots of cookies and milk. And I raised $200. $100 went to my dad, and the other $100 went to charity, because that's what my school was doing when I was younger. And they were doing sort of things like UNICEF and stuff. And I just loved that. It was just make me felt so good. But that was my first intuitive hit. And for my Intuitionology podcast series, I've interviewed over 1,000 people. One of the questions I sometimes ask is, what was your first intuitive experience, or how young were you? And people have told me when they were 3, 5, 7. Some had one that sensed in the womb that they could. So it all depends on how far you can believe it, and how far you take things like that, or manifestation. It all depends on how the limits that you have in understanding the power of intuition. But certainly people have just experienced that much when they were younger, and then the parents come in, or religion, or societal norms. Not to say that's good or bad. It's just that for them, it wasn't for them. It wasn't the way they wanted to seek, higher guidance, or it was just, they knew it wasn't the right way for them. And so they had that intuitive feeling when they were very much younger. What hasn't happened is that we haven't educated the children on intuition. I'm lucky because my 9 and my 14-year-old, I talk about intuition all the time. As much as they roll their eyes, it's helped them out of a couple of bullying incidences. One was 5, the other one was 9. My older daughter is running an official federal nonprofit agency where she raises money for disabilities and illnesses, all based on intuition. Both the girls are getting together. They want to do a Dragons or Shark Tank style education for youth. They've already interviewed a couple of people, a scaling expert and social media expert, on just taking kids through intuition, but in their language, purpose, self-confidence, the ability to talk, make presentations. So what they want to do is give these kids just some basic skills, so that when they go through the program, whether they win because they have a great business idea or not, is immaterial to the exercise. The exercise is, here's a 6-month program that these kids want to educate their peers on, giving them the confidence to trust their intuition, again, couched in their language.
Yes. Wow. Well, I'm thinking my own intuition really kicked in when I was little, probably 4 or 5 years old. And we had a neighbor that his name was George, and It was Thelma and George, the husband and wife. And they would visit on a regular basis, neighbors. I was at my grandparents' home, and I woke up in the middle of the night, maybe 3 or 4 in the morning, and I ran and told my grandparents that George had come and visited me, and that he told me he was going to go away and he was going to leave me a bag of money. And
Wow.
and they said, okay, that's a weird dream. Go back to sleep, honey. That's nice. The next morning, the wife, Thelma, came over. George passed away in his sleep, and she brought a bag of silver coins that he had left for me. And I get chills now because, and they were like, whoa. And they said, well, that was just a coincidence.
No.
that way, and I was like, okay. And
I'm telling you, that is not a coincidence.
exactly.
It is not a coincidence. That's happened to you many times. That's
No,
happened to me many times. That's happened to the over 1,000 people I've interviewed many
exactly.
times. That can't be a coincidence when you have that many people talking about the same thing or something, a version of that.
Right. And
Amazing.
it's a beautiful connection thing that we have. And I don't know, scientifically, was there a knowing that I, as this little child, knew he was going to transition soon? I had no idea he would leave me any money or a bag of money. How would I know this? Even on a, I didn't really visit their home as much as they would visit us. So it was interesting. And I've
Yeah.
had many of those in my life, and
Yeah.
my children. So like for me, for my children, I adopted three. I have three of my own. So I have a big family of beautiful children that are all grown now. Some of them are home from college because the college and the dorms are closed. And I love this time having them home. It's like a bonus time with your kids that you don't usually get. And so my daughter and I have these long talks, and she has this intuition that's incredible. And she told me back in right before our lockdowns, she had moved over actually for another reason. And so right before the lockdowns, she told me, Mom, let's go back to our old house in another state and visit everyone. I have to see my friends and say goodbye. And I was like, honey, we go every month. What are you talking about? No, I have to go now. I feel like I need to see them now, or else maybe I won't see them for a long time. Well, then we have the pandemic and the states are locked down and we can't travel to go see those people for a long time. She knew, not really the pandemic, but she knew she needed to see people because she wasn't going to see them for a long time, and she had to go. And and so I said, okay, let's go then. Let's listen to that and go. If you need to go, let's go. And so I'm glad we did, or else we wouldn't be able to see those people, some of which a couple crossed over, grandparents and stuff. And she wanted to see them and hug them and talk to them and visit with them. And she felt so compelled. And so it's listening to that. And it made absolutely no sense because I get paid. They put me up in a hotel. I get paid to travel and consult and go. So every month we would go for a week to go visit everyone. So she was it was an emergency almost. She had to go.
Wow.
And then we hear about the lockdowns a few weeks later where we would not have been able to go the next month. And it made perfect sense.
Yeah, and this is where I know this has happened, and what I try and do is look at some of the research to say, okay, what's there that's starting to itch at explaining this? And there's a couple of things that I've come across. One is called mirror neurons. So we've got neurons here, so they're mirroring, and we both have them in the front here. And the idea is that because we're connected here, you're connecting with whoever that you have a relationship with, that there's an energy field around those neurons, and that gets implanted in the brain such that when you're separated by physical distance, that energetic vibe, so to speak, is still there. And so you're connected energetically. And then others have also looked at, like atoms and protons and neurons. They all have an energy about them. And so intuition is really about energy, and it's the transfer of energy. And so if you extend that to wherever you are in the world, we are actually energetically all connected. So this is where it all depends upon, how far you believe and you want to take it through your own experiences. That's really, really important. And this is why I get you to look at yours, listen to others as well. So you talking is like, it's just, for me, it's confirmatory because I've heard these kind of stories again and again and again. Another interview, Kirsten Hathcock, she sees kids who've been abused and murdered and passed on, but they show up in their life when she connects with someone from their life, and she's actually solved cold cases because the kids led her to where they were murdered and abused, and then she went to the police, and she couldn't talk about the cases themselves. So, some people will say that doesn't make sense, and so I guess for me, it's not there to convince you that happens. For me, I'm here to say, okay, let's forget those experiences. Let's just talk about the ones where you're actually making a decision, and these are positive, negative signals. Let's start there. And the more you want to explore the power of intuition, now we get into stories like yours, and stories like Kirsten's Hathcock and many others who thought knew their dog had died, knew their parent had gotten cancer, could predict an accident waiting to happen, and almost got into that accident because they knew what to do at the last second. Someone who would constantly drive past red lights all the time at 2:00 in the morning and speed through, self-professed. And the one time he decided not to, something told him to stop, which he never does. One time he did, and the snowplow ran the red light and came right barreling through.
Wow.
And he said, had I kept going, I would be dead. I would not be here telling you this story. So these are sort of unexplained things that, to me, is sort of the power of intuition that happens when you actually tap into it. You resonate with it, and you live your life by it. These things are possible, but let's just dial it down to even just making your decision and being successful and making the right decisions. That's what you do. And from here, then that one step, just like David into the ocean, you just keep moving forward. And when you do that, trusting your intuition, and then you look back, you have no clue how far you've come, because the door of opportunity opens in another one and another one. And now you're successful in life intrinsically, not extrinsically.
Yes. So if you're listening in right now, going through a time where we're finally rebuilding and getting back on our feet after 2020 and all that, and hopefully we're getting to the end or closer to the end of our lockdowns and pandemic, there's lots of decisions to be made in business and in our personal life right now. And so it's, wow, what a great program and way to learn how to use our intuition to guide us to make the best possible choices when there are a lot of unknowns, and we need to really go with something like intuition to help us make those solid decisions as we rebuild this year.
Absolutely. It's key. And now is a really good time, because a lot of people are being introspective. They're having those conversations. What is my real purpose? Businesses are having this. How can I really serve the customer? How can I really run a great company? And these are, decisions that are inward looking, and you got to get real. You got to get down to what's your purpose? What's your passion? What's your goals? And it intrinsic again, right? And now's the time, because when the whole thing lifts, I just believe that it's just going to be so cathartic for everyone, because everyone's living their truth. Everyone knows their purpose. Nobody's being shady. In general, hopefully there's always a bell curve, but I just think it's just a wonderful time to do this and really realign yourself to find out what you're really meant to do, because that's what's going to make you happy, and not sometimes what we backfill it with just a mundane day-to-day lattes, business suits, or just not being connected. And again, you're just wasting all that time, when today you can really get connected to live every single day purposely, guided by intuition. And then you're on the path to success, because every decision is the right one. And that's how happiness is, in my view.
Yes, that's beautiful. Now, if someone were to work with you or work with your programs, can you explain how that works, or how they would get involved with that?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of ways. The first thing I always suggest is they go get the ebook, and the ebook will take them automatically to the 7-day challenge. And the 7-day challenge will take them through that 7 steps. So even before they even want to think about doing anything with me, they actually solve a problem with their intuition, using a problem they have and their components. And I have 2 case studies of people that go through that with them every single day. I've had over 54,000 people go through the 7-day challenge. 100% of the time, their intuition has increased in strength, because I actually measure it from a percentage at the start and at the end of the 7 days. The 2 case studies are, one is John Harris, who used the 7 days to sell his house. At the start, he was actually almost going to sell his house as $20,000 under asking. At the 7 days, he actually, there was a bidding war, and he and his wife agreed at $50,000 over asking. So that 7 days was a $70,000 decision. And the second case study that goes through it is Ashley Michelle, she was actually a witness to a homicide. She walked into her apartment. Her boyfriend had just murdered one of their friends, locked the doors behind her, put a knife to her back, and said, "You're next." Her intuition got her to calm down. He ended up choking her, assaulting her, asking her to clean up the blood, which she refused. She then got the intuitive moment to leave, unlocked the doors, ran 18 flights down, called 911. And obviously she was there to tell the story to me. She's one of my podcast guests. So that incident got a lot of PTSD, depression, and anxiety. So she used the 7-day challenge to basically say, how do I minimize this? It's not going to fix it. How do I minimize that? And so every single step, when you're making a decision on how you use that intuitive component of yours, Ashley and John will show you how they use their intuitive component to solve their problems. And at the end, Ashley Michelle actually went back to the gym where she was able to find what I call an intuitive medium. That's where she's just like, oh, this is where my place. And she was able to start trusting people a lot more in that 7-day challenge. So what I say is start with a 7-day challenge, because if they're able to solve their problems, so can you. Now you have a template for taking every single decision. And if you want to go further, I've got a membership program. And so there's a monthly membership, $39, and there's a 4-week intensive where I look at taking the intuitive hurdles that you have. There's 4 of them that we mentioned before, and I completely eradicate them using a 4-step process. That's a proprietary one that I've used on clients before. I've got there's 16 testimonials on my website of how that intensives help their lives, both in business and personal life, and they're all making now the better decisions in their lives. So, but it's up to you. You take the template, you're good to go. If you want to dive in further, there's always my social media stuff, or the membership, or the intensive. If you just don't want to, you don't want to waste any more time. Let's figure out what the 4 steps is, because you want to start making your decisions right now, the best ones.
Great. And so to join the challenge, where do people go exactly?
So there's 2 ways to do it. On my website at the top, you can see 7-day challenge, or if they grab a free copy of the ebook, that'll naturally take them to the 7-day challenge page where they can go in and sign up. And once again, it's completely free, because the whole point that I'm trying to do with Intuitionology is I'm trying to show you what intuition is, but I want you to actually implement your intuition in a problem that you're solving, because this is your tool. This is your phenomenon. These are your signals. So let me help you highlight it so that you can solve a problem. And that's my goal. And if I can do that for you, you're set. And all you have to do is just make sure you don't slip.
So is it intuitionology.com or?
Correct. Yeah, intuitionology.com.
Intuitionology.com.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm also on all the socials. So I've got LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm taking a hand at TikTok. I'm not going to dance, because if I dance, I'm afraid I'm not going to get followers except for my daughters. But I'm going to get a bit on TikTok and just spreading small tips on how to trust their intuition. I've got the podcast series. So you can always subscribe to that on all the major podcast distribution apps, or they can go to intuitionology.com/podcast, and they can listen to podcasts there. So lots of ways to find out what I'm doing. And Sunil at sunil@sunilgodse.com. You can always send me an email or DM me. Happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Well, that's incredible. I will definitely join the challenge. So I hope to see or have you all join as well, and let me know how that goes for you. And thank you again for being a guest on the show, Sunil.
No problem.
Forward to learning more. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be right back. Hey, this is Sheila Mack, and this is the Sheila Mack Show on NBC's KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. And today we were talking about the benefits of meditation, and a good solid meditation practice that can be as short as you'd like, even 10 or 20 minutes a day. So I looked up some of the benefits of meditation based on science, and here is just a short list I wanted to share with you. Science-based benefits of meditation. It reduces stress. Stress reduction is one of the most common reasons people start a meditation practice. Meditation helps alleviate anxiety and depression. Meditation also has been shown to promote better overall emotional health and a sense of well-being. Meditation has been shown to enhance self-awareness. Meditation may reduce age-related memory loss. That is a good thing. And meditation generates elevated awareness, and the ability to be in a state of peace and kind actions. And also, meditation helps people overcome addictions. And I have interviewed quite a few people on the show who have overcome addictions, and many of them have actually said that they started a meditation practice as part of their healing journey, overcoming the addiction, and it really made a difference for them. And that also goes for many clients that I've worked with. In my new book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation, I also have an entire chapter dedicated to overcoming addictions, and also another one on self-care and spirituality, where I get more into how meditation, prayer and meditation, whichever you choose or however you choose to have this special gift of time each day, can truly heal you and help you as you are overcoming a tough situation, whether that be an addiction or if you are getting out of a difficult situation, maybe leaving an abusive situation, going through a divorce, whatever it is that you might be dealing with right now when you feel overwhelmed, just with 2021 starting out and we're getting back on track, and still in some parts of the world dealing with the pandemic virus that is hopefully going to end soon. I am looking forward to the day when Corona is just a beer again. But until then, meditation is a really helpful way to get through these very interesting times. So I also have a picture here of Kobe Bryant, and one of his statements, he said that it's meditation, the first thing I do when I get up, that I find that to be the best way to start the day. And what a beautiful, incredible soul Kobe was, and his legacy and memory lives on, and his beautiful daughter as well. And so there are so many people who practice hard, train hard, work long hours, and they have used this meditation as a time to heal, to reboot, and to actually be able to give 100% to the rest of their day. So there's many studies about this. I hope you check out some of Tom's programs on meditation, and I also have a free gift for you. If you go to sheilamac.com/boots, BOOTS meditation, I will send you a free gift, which is a short meditation to get you started on your meditation journey, or to add to your prayer and meditation practice that you already do. And now I'd like to share with you a short Dear Sheila that came in that talks a little bit more about meditation. Take a listen. And now it's time for a Dear Sheila. So if you have a question for me, please send it in to www.dearsheila.com, and your question may be selected to be shared on one of the radio shows. And if your question is shared, it will also be entered in a contest. This is a giveaway question contest. So once your question is shared on the air, you'll be entered to win a prize, and we have some fun prizes from many different vendors. So send your questions in again to Dear Sheila. Dear Sheila, I struggle with really bad panic attacks. Sometimes it gets so bad that it gets triggered at work and I will have to leave because I can't stop crying. I can't live like this anymore. I'm thinking about trying medication because I want to get in control of my thoughts and my breathing. Because I've heard that meditation helps with anxiety. What do you think about that? What advice can you give me about meditation versus medication? and what techniques work best to conquer anxiety. Signed, Struggling to Breathe. Dear Struggling to Breathe, panic attacks are some severe issues. Now, meditation is a huge help. However, I would definitely start with checking in with my doctor. And the reason I say that is because sometimes panic attacks can be a symptom of something else going on physically. So I would suggest that you go to your doctor, have them do a regular physical exam, and let them know what's going on. Was there something that triggered these attacks? Was there something that happened in your life? Did you hit a rock bottom event that you started to notice these panic attacks? Sometimes it could be that your vitamin D levels are severely low, or some other thing could be terribly off. It could be a medication that you're taking that's interacting with some other thing you're taking, or a food you're eating, and it's causing you to feel like you're having panic attacks. It could be hormones that are off. And so just rule those things out first. You can start meditation right away. Doesn't mean you have to wait for the doctor to start meditation, because meditation is something you could do at any time in your life. It could have been an auto accident. It could have been losing a loved one. Anything can cause panic attacks, and it could be that it reminded you of something that happened when you were really young, and then one little thing brings all that back, and then you start having these severe panic attacks. And once you have a panic attack, it makes you have physical symptoms. And so learning how to breathe when you meditate. When we meditate, we're learning how to slow ourselves down, how to breathe, and how to let go of the outside thoughts and go into a place where we can just calm ourselves. So we're training our body and we're retraining our brain to think differently and get control of our thoughts, because that's a way to get control of these panic attacks. And there has been study after study that shows that meditation will help you overcome these panic attacks. So between your medical doctor, perhaps some therapy or other resources, depending on what was your trigger, and good meditation practice, you can overcome these panic attacks quickly and get back on track. I hope this helped. I also would like to share with you some other things that I also offer. I do have Mastermind live weekly courses, and those are available at SheilaMac.com, SheilaMac.com. Here it is, my latest book. I have to let you know something, just between you and me. This book is not one size fits all, just like a pair of boots or a bra. So the formula is designed to help you through any situation. But I do have some homework for you. Go ahead and grab a copy of my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now available on Audible, Amazon, and Kindle, as well as at www.sheilamac.com, and get your free Boots meditation gift for the holiday season at sheilamac.com/Boots meditation. Thanks for listening.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mac's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. So if life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com today.